Hello, everyone, and welcome to the With Chinese Characteristics podcast. I'm Natalie.
I'm Cherry.
And together we talk about topics with Chinese characteristics, whatever those might be. And I think today, Cherry, in order to distract ourselves from the sort of self-inflicted tragedy going on in China right now.
Yeah.
In Shanghai.
Many other tragedies in the world.
Yeah.
It has not been a good few weeks.
We're going to talk
month,
about
3 years.
Yeah. We're going to talk about another externally inflicted tragedy upon China, which is the...
So I can blame someone else for this one.
Yeah, you can blame somebody else for this one.
Me as China.
Yeah, you as China.
Me as the spokesperson
you
of
as
China.
As the soul of the Chinese people.
Yeah.
You can blame somebody else for this one.
Self-proclaimed. Yeah, okay. So what's this tragedy?
Well, we talked about the first Opium War.
Okay.
Which at the time was just called the Opium War.
Yes.
And now we're going to talk about what is often called the Second Opium War.
Okay.
But really, it's not really about opium. I think at the time it was more called the Arrow War, or it had other terms for it.
Yeah. Well, actually, when you said it's not about opium,
yeah,
it reminds me of whenever I hear like, the Civil War in America.
Yeah.
It's not about slavery, which it was. But in this case, it really wasn't about opium, or it was about more than opium.
It really wasn't about opium. I mean, the first Opium War, as we talked about in a couple episodes, really, it wasn't also truly about opium in that like it was really about a trade imbalance that caused conflict, but opium was the thing that triggered it. Opium was the kind of the issue on the table.
Yeah.
So calling it the Opium War and Lin Zexu burned the opium, it's not inaccurate, right?
Yeah.
But we'll talk about opium basically has nothing to do with it.
Okay.
The Chinese government, the Qing court, has basically given up on any attempt to ban opium.
Okay.
It's no longer really even on the table. They realize they just don't have the power to do it.
Then why did they call it the Opium War? Or why do we?
The Second Opium War?
Yeah.
I don't actually know. That might actually be something I'll look up for the next part because I don't fully know. Well, opium gets legalized at the end of this.
Okay.
So maybe people consider it kind of part of a trend.
Okay.
Let's get into it. So the first Opium War was a tragedy for China, but it wasn't exactly an unprovoked war of aggression on behalf of Great Britain. While there were certainly those on the British side who wanted and stood to benefit from war, the inciting incident was a deliberate move by Lin Zexu and the imperial court to reassert the supremacy of imperial power and authority in Canton amongst the foreign traders there, and thus stamp out the opium trade.
Lin Zexu was putting his feet down.
Lin Zexu, the emperor, said, do whatever you got to do to get rid of opium.
Yeah.
And then Lin Zexu burned the opium and like banned foreign traders and, did all this stuff. And the emperor's like, woo.
But you were saying on the Chinese side, there was a coherent effort by Lin Zexu and his people, and not by the emperor, to push back.
Yeah, and amongst scholars and thought leaders,
yeah,
that like we have to really put our foot down and show these foreigners that we are essentially more powerful than they are.
Yeah.
And that then they'll stop kind of annoying us all the time. And that obviously backfired.
Yeah.
But anyway, so it's important to recognize that the British at first did not want the first Opium War and were not entirely confident that they could win it. As previous attempts to challenge Qing authorities, such as with Lord Napier in 1833, had ended in death and disgrace. However, the relatively easy victory of the British over imperial and local forces, though, completely changed the attitude of the British towards China. It was now seen as a place where violence, not diplomacy, was the most effective tool for negotiation, and its government was viewed not as an equal, but in a semi-colonial light. China had been humbled by the might of the British Empire, as many saw it, and they should henceforth know their place and be more willing to acquiesce to British demands.
So they were like, now we've shown them.
Yes. We've shown them that we have this military, this navy, that we have this power.
Yeah.
So they should recognize that, and they should negotiate with us at least as equals.
Yeah.
And not call us barbarians on all the documents, which again is the thing the British really did not like.
Well, because they like to call other people barbarians.
Yeah. Well, they don't call people barbarians.
Well, you know what I mean.
In the official documents.
No.
They're not going to write a letter to some prince in India and go, to the barbarian prince,
But they're the saviors. They're the advanced,
yes,
civilization to save the others.
Yes.
So this is what the British side thought?
This is what the British side kind of took out of it.
Did the Chinese court also think this?
No.
Yeah.
The Chinese court thought the exact opposite.
Okay.
Which is interesting because we talked about this in the last kind of the end of the first Opium War, how there was a really quick kind of coming to terms and self-justification how the war ended. First they're like, oh, this is a tragedy. We've been humbled by these barbarians. And then very quickly they're like, you know what? It's fine. We paid them some money.
Yeah.
They took a little island.
Yeah.
Who cares? China is, obviously you have an emperor. You have a court.
Yeah.
You have officials. It's very difficult to say like what China thinks. And there's so much power invested in individual people.
Right.
That sometimes what only really matters is what the local governor thinks or whatever.
Because within the court, they might not even agree.
There's disagreements and all sorts of stuff.
Or left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right? So China had a long history dealing with aggressive neighbors on its land borders. And the British, despite the massive trade relationship, were not dissimilar. Such barbarians, which is talked about, how do you pronounce it?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I don't.
Barbarian.
野人.
How would you say the yeah part?
Yeah.
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 It's the same thing as go. Like Nali can't do the turn in Chinese, which is fine. we get it. It's fine. I can pronounce certain things in English.
Okay.
I think our audiences get what. So the barbarians.
The barbarians,
yeah.
Right? Which is the term they use, could be dealt with in various ways.
Okay.
Fighting, sometimes you go out and you crush them and then they don't bother you for a while.
Yeah.
Defending, you build walls and fortifications.
So they were seeing these faraway British people, who are now in China or near China.
Yes,
they're seeing them as like the equivalent of like the Mongols.
Yeah.
In a way,
or the others.
Even though we're talking about the Manchurians here, like the court is Manchurian.
Yeah.
But they were like still the Mongols are the barbarians.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Or maybe even on a lesser note, like as a C version, the Japanese, because the Japanese have piracy and raiding, all these things, right? There's multiple things you can do, right?
Right. But they were like, this can fit into our formula of dealing with barbarians.
Right? Yeah.
Okay.
So you can fight them, you can defend, you can build walls and fortifications and things, and you can soothe them. So defending had worked for about a century. Yeah. Over a century, really, when you consider the Portuguese and all these other groups of people.
Right.
And fighting now had failed. So now, we'll soothe them. So we'll soothe them.
We'll pay some money.
We'll soothe them with gifts of silver.
Yeah. Little
territories.
Okay.
That's just what you do. These simple barbarians.
Who cares about Hong Kong? It's just a rock.
It's just a rock, right?
Although it's also all part of the narrative. Yeah. That like when you care about the territory, you will not give an inch. But like when you have given the territory and you need to bring the narrative back, you're like, it's just a rock. It's just one of our strategies. It's all under control.
It's like when there's a document that like somebody owes China something, it's an unbreakable treaty. But if China owes something to somebody else in the modern day, it's just a historical document.
Yeah. It's a little dig on what happened in
if there's some island on a map in the 1600s, that's like, no, that's part of China forever. Yeah. But it's like, oh, well, Hong Kong has to have a government for 50 years. It's like, it's a historical document, you know.
I think they said, was it 50 years?
They're supposed to have one country, two systems for 50 years.
Oh, for 50 years. Yeah. Okay.
Post reunification, which is...
but now it's a historical document.
Now, it's a historical document. So it's only natural that barbarians are aggressive and warlike compared to the serene Middle Kingdom, right? That's just how barbarians are, right? Obviously, they're good at fighting, The
Manchurians really settled in this Han-centric view of like who they were, who they are.
And also, but the thing is, a lot of people on the ground are Han at this point, right? So, it kind of filters out. Yeah. So having to give money to a mugger did not make the muggers superior. On the other hand, though, things were not going so well in the interior of the Middle Kingdom. And now was not the right time to challenge the foreigners again. Rebellions are cropping up like wildfire. Yeah. So the first Opium War, Treaty of Nanjing, is, I think, 1842. And then...
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay. As long as that's not a question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's either... I don't know. It's 1842.
I know I'm supposed to remember every single humiliating treaties.
Yeah. So it ended. Yeah. So we're talking now... the next decade or so, right? So, 1840s going up to the 1850s. Okay. Bad times in China. Okay. Particularly bad times in China. I know we talked about prior to the first Opium War, bad times in China, even worse times in China right now.
Always seems to be bad times.
So while the imperial government would really like to deal with these barbarians, show them, who's really superior, they got a lot of stuff on their plate. So let's talk about some of the stuff currently on the the government's plate here.
Okay.
So rebellions cropping up like usual when they do in a tumultuous time period. Mm-hmm. The largest of which we've talked about before, the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom.
Yeah.
Of course, which was sparked possibly, sort of by the barbarians because
it was a semi-religious or under the name of Christianity.
Yes,
at least.
A translated fragment of the New Testament.
Yeah.
Made its way to Hong Shouchuan, who believed himself the younger brother of Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Then he said, "Stop listening to Jesus Christ. Just listen to me now."
Yeah.
And then the Western,
there were some issues with his doctrine.
They weren't very happy about it.
There were some issues with his interpretation of Christianity. Let's just say, but he had failed the imperial exams 3 times.
Yeah.
Basically went insane or had a revelation. Your mileage may vary. I don't know if there's any Hong Shouchuan apologists out there for the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom.
I haven't met any, but I do think I just hear the stories of failing the imperial exam 3, 4, 5 times a lot.
Yeah.
And then,
Do you know who else failed it like 3, 4 times?
Oh, God. Why don't you tell us?
Ren Shikai.
I know.
And do you know what happened to him? He became emperor.
Yes.
So.
There is one.
Hong Shouchuan became emperor too.
There's at least one Yuan Shikai apologist in the room.
That's actually untapped territory for world religions.
What?
You have Judaism.
Yes.
And then you have Christianity, which builds on that.
Okay.
You have Islam, which essentially builds on that. You have Mormonism, builds on that. But I don't see any true faith Taiping religion out there who said, actually, no, really, he was the younger brother of Jesus Christ.
Well, I think it got cut off.
Okay. Well, you know what? If anybody out there wants to start a new religion, a new world religion,
you can pick it up right where he left it off.
Yeah, right where he left it off.
Yeah. So the Taiping Rebellion was going on. That's one of the problems the Qing court had to deal with.
Yeah, which is going to end up obviously killing tens of millions. It's going to destroy half of China. But in any case, by 1851, the Taiping Rebellion has seized Nanjing, the second most important city in China.
The southern capital.
The very same city that Pottinger had threatened to destroy at the end of the First Opium War in 1842.
Yeah.
So that kind of shows you sometimes why things in China, people often focus more on internal affairs than external affairs. Mm-hmm. Because sure, the British are annoying, but they went to go burn down Nanjing. Maybe a couple 100,000 people died in the war. You pay them off and they leave.
Okay.
Internal rebellion kicks off. You lose Nanjing. Half the country is in flames.
Yeah. Things
get really crazy.
Not to mention you lose power.
Yeah,
you as the imperial court or whoever's in power at the time.
Yes. So the scale of the danger is way different. So other rebellions, some of them also millions of people strong, pop up all over the country, such as the Nian to the north, who are also really huge, but they're just not as organized as the Taipings. There's this thing called the Small Sword Society.
Okay. Small swords?
Small Sword Society. Like a short sword.
Okay.
And they basically came out of bandit armies.
Okay. What's a small sword? Is that the weapon of choice?
I think that's kind of they're bandits. They use daggers and small swords.
Okay. It's a bit of a cutesy name for uprising. Okay.
Well, we can't all be the so-and-so turban, the so-and-so
red
flag.
Red turban, yellow turban, black flag.
We got to kind of sometimes mix it up a little bit.
Okay.
So to add to this, due to massive flooding in the early 1850s, the Yellow River changed course, causing massive widespread famine, which intensified banditry and rebellion.
Okay. When the Yellow River changes course, nothing good follows.
Nothing. It's one of the most important rivers in China. Yeah. And basically what'll happen is that it will flood. And when a river floods its banks, it flows all over the countryside. Mm-hmm. And then it might find that actually it likes to get out to the sea over to the left more than it likes to the right.
Yeah.
And then now suddenly, the entire river shifts. Mm-hmm. And, you have all of these ports and towns and and riverside docks that no longer have water.
Yeah.
It washes whole towns away. You have things like the Grand Canal, which is the Grand
food
Canal
transportation.
Yeah,
is affected.
Grand Canal really gets a second string to the Great Wall.
Yeah.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
Grand Canal is basically they built a giant man-made canal all the way down the center of China to move, rice and grain up and down. And
yeah. I'll do an episode on that, maybe.
Yeah. And now it's not connected to anything.
No.
So
you cannot transport rice, basically.
Yeah, so it's a huge deal.
Yeah.
So inflation too continues. Again, always a problem, never enough silver. Silver becomes more and more expensive in terms of copper coin. They start printing paper notes. They start printing larger copper coins. They go, now this is worth 50 copper coins.
Okay.
But it's only like twice the size of a 1 copper coin.
Right.
So, people lose faith in the money.
Yeah.
You have all this inflation. The emperor too was also a weakness. You have the Zhongfang emperor.
Okay.
Who took power in 1850 at the age of 19, who, if anything, was even more indecisive and weak of a leader than his father, the Daoguang emperor, who was the guy in the First Opium War who, despite his faults, at least seemed to have a grasp on the situation.
Yeah.
Right? He kept changing his mind.
He did.
But he was at least kind of interested. So, for obvious reasons, there's no desire to reignite the conflict with the foreign barbarians in this tumultuous time. Still, though, imperial power and Qing sovereignty must be respected. So just because we don't want to fight them doesn't mean we can let them walk all over us.
Yeah. Can't lose face.
No, can't lose face. And also, we can't. You give these barbarians an inch, they take a mile.
Yeah.
So China found its new hero in Ye Mingchen, governor of Guangdong province. He resisted British efforts to gain residency in Canton.
Okay.
And, he was very, very kind of stonewalled them. He didn't let them in. He, if they threatened him and they'd bring in troops, he wouldn't back down.
So playing hardball.
Playing hardball. But also, he tried to keep up good relationships with them, but he also wouldn't give them anything that he thought that, like, China hadn't agreed to do. And remember, the contract or the treaty at the end of the First Opium War, for the British, it said you get residency in Canton.
Yeah.
For the Chinese, it said temporary residency.
Right.
So they have two different versions of the contract.
Yeah.
So the British think we should get this.
Yeah.
Chinese think, well, no, you shouldn't.
This is temporary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't care what you wrote in your little barbarian language over there.
Yeah.
Like, we signed the Chinese version. This is what we're going to follow.
So in this case, really, quite literally, something didn't translate.
No, it was lost in translation, Sherry.
Yeah. And maybe intentionally.
Yeah, right?
Yeah,
but I mean,
it wasn't just a detail overlooked.
Yeah.
It might have been a, implemented misunderstanding.
Yeah, well, that's why you got to have good translators, Cherry.
Yeah.
So if you're doing business in China, especially if you're doing law, pay your translators more.
Yeah, but not if the Chinese ban everyone from learning or from teaching the foreigners Chinese.
Yeah, but at this point, the foreigners are teaching each other Chinese.
Yeah, I know. You can't stop the what do you call it? Like the wheels of history moving forward.
So foreigners, British, French, because everybody has these treaties that are basically they say we get the best stuff that anybody else gets. Right? So basically everybody gets what anybody else gets. So all the foreigners are kind of in the same boat. And they basically, you can't go more than a day from the foreign settlements because you have nowhere to stay. Right? So you technically, they're not going to murder you. Well, sometimes they will. But, if you ride out past the foreign settlement, but like, where are you going to stay? Right? Like hotels and inns, Chinese inns won't let you stay there. So you're really limited to a very small kind of circle around these international settlements.
Okay.
And the British, they want to little greedy little fingers. They want to get deeper into China.
Yeah.
So they don't like this. So, and for obvious reasons, again, the Qing did not want them doing this. But let's talk about specifically why, because these issues are all going to come up.
Okay.
The main reason, the overarching reason, is that it had the potential to cause friction and violence that would escalate once again into open war. And
between the people and the foreigners?
Yeah, between the Qing and the foreigners.
Okay.
And the Qing knew this. The British kind of knew this, and they didn't care.
No, I mean like between the court and the foreigners, or like you mean like.
Well, so here's what happens. Well, we'll get into it.
Okay.
So let's talk about these four big flashpoints.
Okay.
So.
I think you're getting into the Chinese spirit. You like to number things now.
The four great flashpoints, right?
Yeah, the four great literature works, the 8 great generals. The
four great diplomatic problems.
Okay.
So the trade imbalance between the British Empire and China had not been resolved.
Right.
In fact, it had only gotten worse. More international ports meant more trade, which meant more more silk, tea, and other goods purchased by British traders.
Okay.
Chinese desire for British imports actually fell, not surprising. which made the imbalance even worse.
So there's just more ways for China to sell things to the British. And that's what the more ports had done.
And the Chinese don't like the British anymore. It's almost like an early boycott.
Okay.
They don't want British stuff.
Yeah.
Even opium could barely make up the difference.
Okay.
And the British often had to pay in silver, which they were deeply unhappy about. An 1852 report to Bonham, who was the chief superintendent of trade at the time for Britain, said, "It seems a strange result after 10 years of open trade with this great country that China should not consume half so much of our manufactures as Holland." So, getting spying on all stuff, we're not giving anything back. So
we have no use of barbarian goods.
I know. We have, what did Qin Long say? Like strange and like trivial goods or something when he was like the British were trying to like wow him with all this stuff. He's like, we have no need for these fanciful things. So Christianity and Western political ideas.
Okay.
Western missionaries and traders often actively produced pamphlets and books full of incendiary ideas with the express purpose of destabilizing the Qing state.
Okay.
They knew it was going to destabilize the Qing state. They didn't care. They wanted to do it.
Okay.
They would sneak them into opium chests or hand them out at ports or otherwise pass them around. The Qing state frantically banned and stamped out these documents wherever they were found and harshly punished the holders. But when they failed, the result could be dramatic. For example, Taiping Rebellion, which we recently talked about. And this isn't a dig against China as if like it's super backwards that these ideas are a big deal. It's just that these are ideas that in Europe have been tearing countries apart for over 200 years.
Give us some examples of the ideas.
Like, we have things like the Enlightenment, universal rights of man,
not women, but
no, right? Democracy, republics, new religions, new economic systems, all these things.
So it's inherently incompatible with the current social structure that China has, or many other countries.
Yeah, many other countries too, right?
Right.
I mean, we have things
revolutionary.
Like the French Revolution, the American Revolution,
right?
These wars of religion, the 30 Years' War, that had torn Europe apart for. And
some might argue for the better.
Yeah, but it takes a long time getting there, right? Yeah. And obviously, if you're the Qing court, you're not going to survive this.
Well, you don't think you're going to survive.
If these ideas take hold, right?
Yeah. So you got to kill it in its.
Yeah.
Well, that's a bad joke.
In infancy?
Yeah, let's not say that. Yeah.
You got to nip it in the butt.
Nip it in the butt. Yeah, let's use that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's two reasons.
So number 3. So one's trade, 2 is ideas. 3 is there was a blurring of who was under Qing authority and who was not. You started to have foreign ethnic Chinese, for example, from Singapore, who came claiming to be British subjects.
Yeah.
You also had Chinese living in places like Hong Kong or within the international settlements.
Yeah.
Most of all, you had quote-unquote fair weather foreigners who would claim to be under foreign protection when it was convenient. For example, smugglers and pirates.
Yeah.
It was not always clear whose authority these fell under, and it was not easy for the Qing to verify their claims.
When they're in China and they need to do business, they're Chinese.
Yeah.
When they're in trouble or they're abroad or in America, they're American. Do you know who I'm talking about? I
mean, this is as true today as it is, right?
Yeah. Certain international athletes that really have played the game very well. So.
Or there's just like, if there's kind of people, there's like tankies in China. Yeah. Like Western tankies who are, if something ever happened, they'd probably be quite happy to run back to, wherever they came from. Yeah. Number 4, the foreigners, particularly the British, were quite often essentially just assholes who attempted to provoke an insult at every call. Rarer now were those who felt all mystery or respect towards China. Yeah. Many felt that the lesson of the Opium War was to be aggressive and domineering in every interaction. Yeah. It's almost like wolf warrior diplomacy, by the way. Yeah. As the slightest show of deference would make the Chinese treat you as a subject. Yes. They would get in fights, kick down the doors of magistrates who wouldn't see them, distribute banned texts, sell banned goods, and otherwise just be jerks with the knowledge that they had the full might of the empire behind them and might even be thanked or rewarded for causing the issue, right? Yeah. So
not very nice.
Not very nice. So Governor Ye, however, managed to keep all these plates spinning, and his management of the foreigners earned him the dubious honor of Imperial Commissioner in Canton, becoming the primary contact point for foreign diplomacy. Yeah. So he's in charge of dealing with foreigners. Yeah. This is complicated by, and I haven't really seen a good I don't know how much more difficult it was for him, because remember in 1851, Nanjing gets taken.
Yeah.
Which means the entire, now China's like a horseshoe, because you have this giant chunk taken out of the middle by the Taiping Rebellion.
Yes.
And Beijing's at the top and Canton's at the bottom.
Okay.
So if you do want to ask the emperor something, you can't
gotta go around.
You got to go all the way around the interior of China, or you have to take a boat.
Okay.
Right up to up the coast or something, right? So it's I'm sure it's
the emperor's probably quite happy about that though, if we because the emperor doesn't want to be responsible for whatever the local official had agreed to.
Especially not this emperor who's gonna die when he's 30 because he did too much opium and had too much sex with concubines and stuff. So he died very young.
I don't think if you have too much sex with concubines, you will die young.
Well, he died, quote unquote.
Maybe STDs, I don't know.
He's normally described as, I think he died either when he was 29 or 30. He's normally described as dying, quote unquote, of excess. So
playing hard, die hard.
Yeah, so I don't know exactly what the excess was.
Okay, so this emperor is not really focused on politics or
he's not very useful.
Okay.
So he's the foreign contact point now, but he's kind of a hardliner, and I think he's trying to do the best with what he's got.
Yeah.
He was also still the governor of Guangdong province and had to deal with all of the internal issues that entailed, specifically the rebellion, which is going on right now. So the Red Turban Rebellion broke out in the region in 1854. Again, we're back to the turbans. Like many Chinese rebellions, their origin was based in peasant unrest, organized crime, and a heavy helping of mysticism.
Yeah.
In mid-1854, a bandit army seized the city of Qingyuan in northern Guangdong. I'm probably not pronouncing that right, but sparking more uprisings across the province.
Okay.
Eventually, Ye Mingchen, the governor, through a combination of irregular militia, bribes, mercenaries, and brutal executions, managed to crush the core of the rebellion and keep them from taking Canton.
Wow.
The British also played a small role, often getting involved at Chinese request with anti-bandit and anti-piracy activities. So
they want stability?
Yeah, and I think they thought, okay, because pirates would kill British ships too. Yeah. Right? Pirates did not care.
Yeah.
And, not every ship at this point is some opium, is some East India Company warship like they used to be, right? There's all kinds of little British ships cruising around.
Okay.
And so they wanted to get rid of pirates too. And also I think they thought that maybe if we play nice and we kind of help them out, then we'll get what we want, which is access to Canton. But in a way, they're kind of right that I think in the mentality, not to do too much armchair psychology of Ye Mingchen, the governor of Guangdong in 1852 or whatever, is that there isn't really this sense of quid pro quo at this time. It's okay, well, I ask you, send a request for aid, right? You aid me because I'm better than you, and that's what you're supposed to do,
right?
I'm not supposed to necessarily reward you for
back a favor or
right? It's like
But the British didn't think that.
No, the British thought okay, and then we'll
help each other out.
Yeah, we'll help each other out.
Two empires on equal standing.
Yes.
Okay.
But however, the brutality of Ye's crackdown on the Red Turbans, which is again only really brutal by modern standards, it's quite normal by Qing rebellion crackdown standards.
Okay.
Really disturbed the British. Between 100,000 to 1 million people were executed in the province.
Okay.
And the British refused to take part eventually in the suppression activities because
because they don't execute people.
Well, they don't execute hundreds of thousands of people.
Maybe they execute the leaders.
Well, yeah, probably. Yeah, but and it's not it's not like India is it's Disneyland right now. So the British do get up to executing people, but at this they felt like this is kind of too much.
Okay.
Despite the squeamishness of the British, though, the governor had a job to do, and he continued to fight disorder in his province with or without British aid.
The squeamish of the British. That's the first time I've...
Well,
Yeah, I know.
Well, especially...
At that time and at that place and time, it was squeamish.
Well, especially though, we're not really going to get into it because, again, remember, all this is happening. The Taiping Rebellion is raging all over China. So this is a side note.
Right.
The Taiping Rebellion... Yeah, I forget how many people, but it's something like 50 million people died in the Taiping Rebellion. So...
Some insane number.
It's like a crazy number. So and the British eventually get involved in that, which we'll mention at the end. But and even then, cracking down on the Taiping, and they're like, okay, this is a little much, right?
Right.
So on October 8th, 1856, just as a side note, like at this time period with the Qing, and again, I don't know about all other periods in Chinese history, but if a foreign army or bandits or something take over a city, or the Taipings take over a city, and the Qing take it back, they basically almost view it as like there's no non-combatants in that city, right? It's like
they will kill everyone.
They'll
in the
basically
city?
just kill everybody in the city.
Okay.
And they'll go, well, if you were still in there, then
Yeah.
you must have been supporting them, and we're not going to worry about it, right? And we're just gonna
civilian or not.
Yeah, and there's exceptions, but that's very common. That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So in October 8th, 1856, a Chinese crude lorcha named the Arrow. So a lorcha.
What's a crude lorcha?
A lorcha is a type of ship.
Okay.
It's a ship with a western hull. So like, think of a western sailing ship, like
Sure.
a western bottom.
Okay.
And it has Chinese sails.
The western bottom. It's not that kind of a podcast. No.
Okay. Western bottom, Chinese top, Jay.
Yeah.
So like the kind of the junk sails with like the ribbed bamboo rods going across. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it has those sails on a western ship.
Okay.
And the reason that it has the western hull is because it's apparently it's sturdier and it's faster.
Okay.
And but the Chinese sails, you require less crew.
Gotcha.
And in close-in areas sailing around China, it's more efficient,
So it was an optimization effort to build this kind of a ship.
Yeah, and they're very common. Right?
Okay,
They're very common tempered. And so when you see ships with a lot of sails, speed of a sailing ship is partially determined by crew.
Okay.
And the faster you go, the more crew you need to manage everything.
Gotcha.
So anyway, it can be more efficient to have simpler sails.
Okay, so it's one of these kind of ships.
One of these kind of ships is seized by local Qing authorities in Canton Harbor.
Okay.
It has a Chinese crew, but it has in the past been registered in Hong Kong in 1855. But it is expired.
Okay.
So.
But they would claim to not be a Chinese ship though, right?
Well, so an ordinance had been passed in the new colony allowing Chinese residents who are officially renting land there to register ships under the British flag.
Okay.
And Ye Mingchen, the governor, was like, this is a bad idea. You shouldn't do this.
Yeah.
British didn't care. So it was captained by one Ulsterman Thomas Kennedy, a British national, though it was owned by Chinese. It's unclear how active his role in managing the ship was.
Might just be by name only.
Yeah.
But, okay, so correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
If I'm jumping ahead, but this would be one of those whose legal territory are you under kind of a situation.
So it's Canton Harbor.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's docked out there.
Yeah.
But it's theoretically a British flagship.
Yeah.
Even though there's no British people on it.
Yeah. And owned by Chinese, crew Chinese.
Yeah.
One Western captain.
Yes.
So confusing.
Yes.
Okay.
Right?
There's gonna be not everyone agrees.
Yes.
Whether it can be punished under Chinese law.
Because again, we talked about the end of the stuff. You have extraterritoriality where foreign assets and foreign nationals are supposed to be controlled by foreign courts theoretically.
Yes. Yeah.
And interestingly, we'll get into it. So, the crew of the ship was charged with piracy.
Okay.
An allegation that may or may not be true. In the context of this, it doesn't really matter. Many ships were engaged in occasional piracy or smuggling between more legitimate voyages.
Yeah.
Just like many villages in China will do banditry.
Yeah.
If the harvest isn't good.
Yeah. It's a part-time job.
It's a part-time job. The validity of the accusation ends up being less important than what happens next.
Yeah.
The Chinese account is that they simply seized the vessel flying no flag, which had been previously identified in piracy. The crew were all Chinese subjects and thus were under the authority of Qing justice.
Okay.
The British account, witnessed by Ulsterman Thomas Kennedy, the captain, as he ate breakfast on a nearby ship, claimed that the Qing troops boarded a British flagged vessel without provocation, took down the British flag, which was flying, and carried off those brave British subjects to torture for no reason. Kennedy rushed over and secured the release of 2 men and his boat, because he's like, I need some guys to take the boat back. And then the Qing gave him 2 guys who they thought weren't that involved and gave him his boat back. And then he went to find the acting British consul, Harry Parkes, believing that the matter was a misunderstanding that would be swiftly resolved.
Okay.
So Harry Parkes is going to feature prominently. So let's just talk about him briefly.
Okay.
He was 28 years old, which is very young.
So young, okay.
Right? He originally came to China as little more than an orphan at the age of 13.
Oh.
He quickly learned Chinese and accompanied Pottinger during the First Opium War and was even present on the Cornwallis for the surrender negotiation.
Okay.
He had spent his entire adult life in China, furthering the aims of the British Empire, and his worldview has been shaped by his experience. So he really, all he knows is China.
Okay.
Given his worldview, this supposedly heinous insult of seizing a British merchant vessel must be redressed. And he rushed to the boat in order to free the crew, where he claims, though there is some contention, that he was struck by the Qing.
They struck him?
Yeah.
Okay.
The Qing police people.
Okay.
Well, he says they did.
Okay.
The governor's men agreed to free all but 2 of the men, which they had the most evidence of piracy.
Okay.
So they're like, fine, right? It's not worth it. We're going to take these 2 guys because they're definitely pirates.
Okay.
Parks demanded no. You have to free all the crew. And Ye says no. So then things very quickly became both sort of absurd and very violent.
Okay.
So Parks refused to accept the freedom of the crew that Ye did give back to him. So the governor's
he's like, either let all of them go or don't let any of them go?
Well, he's like, I'll take the 9.
Okay.
But you have to hand them over personally on the deck of the ship with the British flag flying.
Okay.
And a special ceremony of apology.
Oh, God. Okay.
Right?
Yeah, we're playing this game now.
You could see, though, to a certain extent how, Parks is British.
Yeah.
But there is a bit of Chinese court in him.
He's thinking the Chinese way.
Yeah.
He's got the Chinese mentality of we got to,
Yeah, we got to make a production of this, right?
Yeah.
So Governor Ye ignored him.
Okay.
Parks moved on to more violent means. He summoned local warships to Canton to press the issue.
Okay. British warships.
Yes. After all, it was him, Harry Parks, and the British Empire to decide if the Arrow was a British ship and not Governor Ye. The Chinese must be taught the error of their ways. And obviously, this is an important concept, right? Because the value of the extraterritoriality only works if you can also agree on what's British and what's not.
Yeah.
If the British can at any point say anything's British, or the Qing could at any point say anything's Chinese, well then...
It's open season.
It's open season, right?
Yeah, for everyone.
And the British are like, no, we get to decide. It's 100% up to us.
Yeah.
If we decide, a random person on the street is British,
then they're British.
They're British.
And the Chinese are obviously not okay with this.
No, they're not okay with that, right? Because already there's Chinese people who will just say, well, I'm British.
Yeah, I'm from Singapore.
I'm from Singapore, right? I'm from Hong Kong, right?
Yeah.
So Bowring, who's the governor of Hong Kong, upon hearing from the situation from Parks, wrote the following. I am very pleased with the manner in which you have done this work. I am determined on obtaining redress. Can we not use this opportunity to carry the city question, residency in Canton? If so, I will come up with the whole fleet. So
never waste a good opportunity.
Never waste a good opportunity.
Never waste a conflict.
Yeah. So this all might seem a little transparent.
Yeah.
And that's from the History of Hong Kong by Frank Welsh.
Although, back in the days, a lot of things seemed transparent.
Yeah.
Political correctness wasn't a thing.
No.
People were just saying,
like, can we get the city?
Yeah.
What can we make
what
out
can
of
we
this?
get out? How can we milk this situation?
This little boat with 10 people on it, right?
Yeah.
Can we turn this into a war? So this all might seem a little transparent, but here's what Palmerston wrote to Bowring. So at this point in 1850, Palmerston is the foreign secretary.
Yeah, I've heard the name Palmerston quite a few times in our series. Yeah.
So he writes to Bowring, who's governor of Hong Kong. I clearly see that the time is fast coming when we shall be obliged to strike another blow in China. Those half-civilized governments, such as those of China, Portugal, or Spanish America, require addressing every 8 or 10 years to keep them in order. Their minds are too shallow to receive an impression that will last longer than some such period, and a warning is of little use. They care little for words, and they must not only see the stick, but actually feel it on their shoulders before they yield to the only argument which to them brings conviction. The argumentum baculinum, which is the argument of physical force, I guess, is Latin. Okay. So now 6 years later, that guy Palmerston is no longer the foreign secretary. Okay. He's the prime minister. So this is the kind of people you have.
That gets ahead.
Yeah, and also this is the kind of mentality you have on the leadership of the British side.
Yeah.
And there was an argument in Parliament, as there always is. There was a vote, and it was very narrow, but he still won it. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
And so now they're going to create a special commission to beat up China. But anyway, let's get back to the Arrow.
I mean, train China from their perspective, really like a dog. Yeah, you got to keep training the dog.
And this is why the Second Opium War is different than the first one. The first one, no one really necessarily wanted a war.
Yeah.
The British wanted stuff. They would have probably taken an agreement. Lin's issue, and they wanted to show, like, British can't just do whatever they want, stop the opium.
Yeah.
And it kind of exploded into a war through a failure of negotiation.
But this time...
No, this is like, can we get an excuse for a war?
Yeah.
And it's almost reminding me a little bit, obviously, Ukraine's in a much better situation, but like Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah.
And that like you have a power that wants something, and obviously they're cloaking it in like, oh, we need security, you know, we're doing this, there's this provocation.
But they want war.
Yeah, but they want a war.
They want to invade the other party.
Yeah.
So it's all just an excuse.
Yeah, it's all just an excuse. It's all just window dressing.
Yeah.
So the British began to escalate the situation, again demanding an elaborate apology and the declaration from the Chinese that they would respect the British flag.
Okay.
Again, impossible, because Governor Ye can't just agree you can decide what's British, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, no country would agree.
No. So
real country.
So the British go, okay, what do we do now? Right?
Yeah.
They go, okay, we're gonna seize a ship. We're gonna seize a government ship, a Qing ship. If
Okay.
you don't do it, and Ye didn't do it, so they seized the government ship. But it turns out it was just some dude's ship.
It was just like a regular.
It was just a regular ship, so they gave it back. Okay. So
Well, so now what? They gave it back. They don't have a ship. They don't have a.
Okay. So then they're like, okay, we're gonna attack the forts.
Okay.
So they attack the forts.
So they escalate.
Yeah. So they attack some forts around Canton, which they do all the time, right?
Yeah.
At this point, they're just like disposable forts, right?
Okay.
Whenever they get mad, they blow up the forts.
Okay.
But no, he continues to ignore it.
Okay.
So,
which does seem to be the Chinese way back in those days.
Yeah.
If we just ignore the problem, the barbarians will blow up some ports and they will leave.
Yeah. Which honestly works about 80% of the time. So,
okay. It's terrible.
Because
but yes.
they had done this a bunch in the 10 years leading up to this, right?
Yeah.
So this is 1856. So
they blow up some steam, you know.
Yeah.
They will think they've showed us. Okay, so they blow up some ports and they no reaction.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they send a letter again and they go, also, because you've done this, we also want access into the city, right? So they officially say, we want the apology, we want the crew back, we want this, and we want access into the city.
Yeah.
And again, when we say city, obviously all this is happening in Canton to an extent. The British stuff's there, but you have to think of it in almost like the medieval sense or the old Chinese sense of you have a walled city.
Yeah.
So you have the walled city, which actually does have a giant wall around it, and that's properly Canton.
Yeah. And the barbarian, sorry, the British settlement, the British settlement is outside.
Outside the gate.
Yeah, okay.
Barbarians at the gate, Cherry. And so, you have all these villages and other things and docks outside the city.
Yeah.
But the
but
actual
they want to
walls,
integrate. They want to be part of the.
I don't know if they want to integrate.
Okay, well, they want to. Yeah, no, integrate is the wrong.
They
word.
want to better try and I guess take advantage of the situation.
Yeah.
They want to.
But they want to be inside the city.
Yeah. They want to proselytize. They're just annoyed they can't go there.
Yeah.
They see it every day. They see the walls there, and they're pissed off.
They're reminded every day.
They're reminded they're not allowed to go there,
Yeah.
and they're pissed off about it.
And they think they're superior. So how come they can't?
Yeah, how come they can't go there?
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
So
what?
So Ye reiterates his points.
Okay.
Right. He says, no, you can't come into the city. He said this was a Chinese ship. It was crewed by the Chinese in a Chinese harbor with no British flag.
Yeah.
And he said he's not tricked by the British. He's like, this is about the concessions. This is always about the concessions. And this is what apparently he wrote.
Yeah.
In letters to people.
Okay.
He said,
who's people?
Well, the Chinese people. I think he wrote it to the people in the city to explain to them what was happening.
Oh, okay. Well, they did that back in the days?
You put out notices.
The Qing government didn't seem too bad. Well, we don't do that now.
It's true. He says, where the English barbarians have commenced disturbances on false pretense, their real object being admission into the city. The Governor General, referring to the unanimous expression of objection to this measure on the part of the entire population of Canton in 1949, apparently they had a vote, has flatly refused to concede this and is determined not to grant the request. Let them carry their feats and machinations to what length they will.
Okay.
So he's like, we all voted.
Yeah.
I mean, probably not we all, but I'm sure that the higher ups in the city said no.
The important men in the city.
Important men in the city said no, we don't want the British in here, right?
Yeah.
And so he's like, no, you can't come in.
Okay.
And this is actually from the British account. So I think the British account doesn't realize how bad this looks, or they just don't care, because Governor Ye is completely right here, and that this is what they're doing and this is why they're doing it.
Again, British account back in the days.
Yeah.
Real candid and honest about what they thought, and which is very creepy nowadays if you look at it. Creepy is the wrong word, but yeah. So
and this is by Lawrence Oliphant, who was the personal secretary of Lord Elgin, who's going to end up being the commissioner.
Okay.
Who's going to have to try and make sense of this when he gets there. It's the narrative of the Earl of Elgin's mission to China and Japan. He went to Japan afterwards.
Okay.
So events started to seem similar to the First Opium War. Chinese servants began to leave the foreign settlements, and British Marines were landed to protect the land. Frustrated, Parks began to bombard the city of Canton and raid and loot government buildings. So they didn't have enough troops to actually take Canton, because it's a big city. There's like, I don't know, over 1 million people there probably.
Yeah.
But they would send people in to raid stuff or blow things up or whatever. And
cause chaos.
None of this seemed to bother Ye, and months later, the entire region, including the foreign factories, was essentially burnt to the ground as the two sides fought over it, right? Fought between Canton and the foreign factories, with the foreigners maintaining a battle line near the harbor.
Okay.
And most of the civilians had fled to Hong Kong. Ye placed a bounty for every British head brought to him, which some enterprising locals took him up on.
Okay.
So British. So if they were alone at night, they'd get beheaded, right? And so
their head is worth some prize money.
It's just like, I think it's like 30 taels or something. There's some sort of
30 taels
of silver.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So things got a little crazy in the area.
Yeah.
As various combatants, including the U.S., all became involved in various degrees, because people are just shooting at everybody, right? And
how do you know if someone's British or
American, right? So all became involved, and civilians on both sides were often caught and killed.
Okay. Yeah.
There was even an incident in Hong Kong where arsenic was mixed into the flour at a bakery, killing several, including the governor's wife. Surprisingly, the baker was acquitted. So they did a trial, and they couldn't prove it was the baker, who was Chinese. And they're like, well, we can't prove it was you.
Okay.
Which a lot of people in the colony were just saying, let's just kill the guy, just in case. But yeah, a lot of people died. They poisoned the bread. So again, this is starting to
poison the bread.
Yeah, they put arsenic, which is rat poison, in the bread.
Okay.
And like 500 people got sick.
Yeah.
But most of them threw it up.
Okay.
But I think like 10 or 15 people died.
Okay.
And so now we're getting almost into like an insurgency, right? Where it's no longer just the Qing. The local people in the area do not like the British either.
No.
So as news filtered back to the UK, many were confused about why such a strong stance needed to be taken over such a clearly minor issue.
Yeah.
One that had now resulted in dozens and countless Chinese dead and displaced hundreds. And, again, probably hundreds of thousands of Chinese. Right?
Yeah.
Not to mention that one may eventually call for another large expedition of troops.
Yeah.
And again, remember, yes, by British standards, this is all very exciting. But
they wanted this.
Yeah, but to China, this is just happening in Canton.
Yeah.
There's so many other things going on, right?
Yeah.
All this stuff's happening.
This is just one little trouble. Many, a sea of troubles that the court is navigating.
Yes. So, or failing to navigate. So an expedition needed to be slightly delayed, though, for in 1857, large numbers of Indian troops mutinied, causing a larger imperial crisis. There's this thing that happened called the Indian Mutiny. Yeah. Nowadays, it's more called the Indian Uprising. Mm-hmm. But, a bunch of, because most of the troops in India were Indian with British officers, and they rebelled.
So the British Empire had, just like the Chinese court is dealing with other problems.
Multiple issues.
Yeah,
right?
they were dealing with other problems too.
Yeah. So given this diffusion of focus, the British shopped around for who would go on this war with them. So who wants to get in on this with us, right? Yeah. So they asked the U.S. The U.S. said no.
Okay.
They asked the Russians said no. The French are like, we're in.
Okay.
So the French had been an ally. So traditionally, France and England are enemies.
Yeah.
But the French had been an ally in the Crimean War against Russia recently, and they agreed. Their excuse was that some French priest had gotten killed in 1856. And they go, we got to revenge that priest.
Well, I'm sure quite a few priests got killed.
People are getting killed in China all the time.
Yeah.
You wander out at night or alone, people might just kill you.
So, but they found a reason, they wanted to be in.
So
they're in.
They said, we're in.
Yeah.
So James Bruce, the 8th Earl of Elgin, interestingly, there's this famous, if you go, I think we probably saw some of them in the British Museum. There's this thing called the Elgin marbles, which were taken from Greece, looted.
Yeah.
And so the person who looted them was his dad.
Oh, God.
The 7th Earl of Elgin.
Yeah.
So, related. And
probably very proud of it, too.
Yeah. Well, there was even mixed feelings of it back then.
Yeah.
So he is chosen as the plenipotentiary.
Okay.
To do this negotiation.
Okay.
He gets there, and he, kind of takes stock of the situation, and he writes to his wife, "I have never been so ashamed in my entire life. I hate the thing so much." So he is not, and
so he doesn't like this.
No, he doesn't like it. He thinks that this is ridiculous.
Okay.
And that it's building a mountain out of a molehill.
Yeah.
And to anybody outside of China, trying to explain to them why we need a war because the Chinese won't let us stay in Canton, just seems completely ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah.
But if you're somebody who's grown up your whole life in China, or you work there for 20 years or whatever,
if you're a British person,
it's a big deal to you.
I guess so.
And so part of this is almost just like these people there start a war.
Yeah.
And then they're trying to just drag the rest of the UK along with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's chosen as a person. 3 years later, in 1860, Elgin would order the most controversial and famous act of the Second Opium War, the burning and looting of the famous Summer Palace.
Ooh, yeah.
So good intentions, Cherry. Only get you so far.
Are we stopping there?
We're stopping there.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, but we're gonna do an episode on the burning of the Summer Palace.
Oh, we're gonna do an episode on. We're probably gonna do 2 more episodes because the troops are gonna get there. There's gonna be fighting.
Yeah.
Right, and then some stuff's gonna happen, and then Summer Palace is gonna get burned, and there's gonna be some aftermath.
Yeah.
And that's basically gonna be the end of, any kind of ability of the
Qing government
to fully like maintain order.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
They've lost their grip from that.
Yeah.
Or after that. Okay.
Well, I guess they've probably already lost their grip.
Yeah, but I mean, officially.
It's very symbolic.
In a way, it's symbolic.
It's symbolic, right? Yeah. That they're not able to prevent it.
And it's public. It's very public, too.
Mm-hmm.
It's one for the history books.
Yeah.
So
I didn't want to get too into it when the kind of troops arrive and the stuff start happening.
I think that deserves,
but
own episode or in the next episode.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't. It's on the same level of like shameless like false flag provocation type thing as like the Mukden incident, I think it is, where the Japanese blew up a bomb on their own railway station.
Yeah, 卢沟桥事变.
Yeah, to start a war with China, right? Mm-hmm. Again, like you said, I mean, it's like Russia and Ukraine. I mean, it's just people. They'll come up with any excuse they need to come up with.
Yeah.
And in the end, they don't care.
No.
It's just they just need enough of a layer so that people on Twitter, or the equivalent in the time period, can go, oh no, they were provoked,
Yeah. Some people.
They're just defending themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the propaganda can have a narrative.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
When you said they mixed the arsenic into the flour, I thought arsenic means like the word arson, and it's like
it's a poison.
Okay, I didn't know. I thought they mixed gunpowder in there or something, and they
No, that would be quite dramatic.
That would be quite dramatic.
People ate the bread and they
exploded. But maybe they wanted to like blow up the bread factory. I don't know. Flour, it's very explosive. So you're saying it was poison.
Yeah, they put poison. They put essentially.
So the word arsenic means poisonous?
No, it's a type of poison.
It's a type of poison.
It's a specific type of poison.
Does it have anything to do with gunpowder? No. Okay. Or fire?
No, I don't know. I don't know.
Then why the word arson?
I don't. Cherry. I don't know. I don't know if there's a shared etymology between arsenic and arson.
Or similar?
I mean, it's ARS.
Okay. Just when I thought I have figured out some rules in English that I can,
No.
But no. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I mean, it's actually kind of interesting. So obviously I'm not saying that there was inequality of justice in Hong Kong or the foreign settlements between white or foreign people and Chinese people, because there wasn't.
Yeah.
But there was an attempt, at least, to, I guess, have equality of justice, right? There was an attempt to like make that happen. I don't think it did.
From which side?
From the British side.
Yeah.
So like there was at least one incident where a British national killed a bunch of Chinese people, or maybe it was just one, and they hanged him.
Okay.
Which people noted on the time that it was like, oh, like this is very rare.
Yeah.
Right.
It was surprising
that you would hang a white man, British white, for killing a foreigner.
Yeah.
So, people were kind of shocked, and some people were pissed off at the time that the baker got off. I wonder if the baker kept baking or if they found a new baker. That might have been, maybe we get a new baker. But,
The bread incident.
Yeah, the bread incident, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the governor's wife died, right? So it was a big deal.
Yeah, but she's just a wife. She's just a woman.
Cherry, you know how hard it is to get a British woman in Hong Kong?
That's true.
You know how far you got to ship them?
I know.
You got to come over on a boat.
Well, also, they weren't allowed in China for, not that long ago.
They weren't allowed in China. You had to sneak them in.
You couldn't bring the daughters and the wives. So.
You had to put a fake mustache on them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
yeah, it's, I think we're going to have another episode.
Yeah.
We're going to actually try and be on time now. I know it's been a chaos. We've not had that good of a release schedule for the last couple months.
We try to aim for every 2 weeks, but it's in reality,
sometimes it
varies.
There's stuff going on in the war. There's a war in Ukraine. There's what's going on in China.
Yeah.
And we just want to sit around and doom scroll.
Yeah.
And feel bad about the world, but can't take any positive steps to improve it.
No. I mean, I don't know if this is not improving the world.
It's not improving the world?
Let's not put a big hat on ourselves.
No, I'm not saying this is improving the world.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying we're sitting around because we don't have any way.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so we're doom scrolling.
Yeah.
Scrolling, but that's why we're delaying the
There's
podcast.
nothing we can do to help people in Shanghai. You know what I mean?
Well, you can't ship anything in, which was the first thing I thought, because I have friends and, but that's a whole other thing. So,
yeah.
That is very depressing to think.
Yeah, I know we did the 4 pests, but...
Well, so, for our listeners, if you didn't know what was going on, which is Shanghai is going through a hardcore lockdown.
Yeah.
And when I say a hardcore lockdown, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't go out unless you're going for groceries or you have to show your vaccine
Western
card.
country
has ever done anything like that ever
Yeah.
in the history of times. But in China, it would mean that you can't go outside of your front door.
Yeah.
And you don't have a house. You live in a city in a little box.
Although we have done it in the past. There would be times when, with tuberculosis and stuff, or things where they would nail a quarantine notice on your door.
On your door or everyone's door?
On the doors who are houses that have been quarantined.
Oh.
But this is in the 30s and 40s and stuff.
Okay. Well, good thing they don't.
They didn't let them starve.
They
didn't let them starve to death.
They deliver some bread, maybe with arsenic in it. Yeah. Yeah. No. So food access is a problem, and imagine if you just lock a whole metropolitan city down of I don't even know how many people. Medicine. People don't get their medicine anymore. Yeah. People have a heart attack. They just die because you can't go to the hospital. Mm-hmm. On time, anyways. So. Yeah. Babies are out of baby formulas. All sorts of things. I don't want to go on. Yeah. So, what was I gonna say? I don't know. A lot of shit going on in the world.
We're just bringing the mood down.
Yeah, we're just bringing the mood down. Although next episode we'll look forward to the story of the burning down of the Summer Palace, which is also not a positive note. Yeah. But maybe for the people who did the burning, maybe they thought that was an event.
They got to loot some stuff.
They got to loot a lot of stuff, if I recall. Yeah. Some of them are probably in the British Museum.
Yeah, I think some of it's still there.
Which is incredibly imperial. After I've been there, I realized.
Well, so again, we'll probably talk about it, but there's all this stuff in the British Museum that was gifted by so and so, and it's oh well, where did so and so get it from?
Yeah, and so is always a lord someone or the 5th Earl of
Gloucestershire. Or something.
Yeah, and it's no, they stole it and then gifted to the British Museum, but I guess does that mean the British Museum stole it? So. I guess that goes into the legality of stolen goods owned, which is not.
Finders keepers, Cherry.
Well, exactly. Well, that was their logic back in the days, anyways.
Well, that's kind of still their logic.
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, anyway, I think next episode is going to be Cherry.
Yay!
We're going to talk about something a little bit more
fun.
Yeah. I guess. Something a little more spicy.
Something a little more spicy. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, thank you for listening. Hopefully everyone's safe.
Yeah.
And have a nice day.
Stay safe, stay strong. I don't know. I mean, you don't have to stay strong.
You don't have to stay strong?
Yeah, just I don't know. Keep going. Yeah. It's going to be okay. Okay. See you next time.
Why don't we slap our legs a little more on the microphone? Yeah.
See you next time.